Hello everyone. Last night I purchased Get Good Drums Studio Cabs Cali edition. And while that's a real mouthful to say, uh, that's yeah, that's what it's called. And it's a really nice plugin. It sounds great. It has some good impulse responses. I bought it off the back of a bunch of interviews that I've seen with Nolly nerding out hardcore on vintage 30 speakers, and knowing that he's a good engineer and he's generally a pretty good brand, I thought, it would be pretty safe to assume that those impulse responses would be super nice. And they are. I like them. They sound good. But what's not good is the plugin that all of these impulse responses are served in. While the user interface is really nice and it does what it's supposed to do, the CPU requirements are really kind of crazy. Sitting at 5% for single cabinet on my CPU, while Nadir would sit at around 1% maybe. So that's like a 2, 4, 5 times increase for single impulse response. What's worse is that the CPU time required for the plugin grows linearly with the amount of cabs. So I look at one cab, it's 5%. I add another, it's 10%. I add a third one, it's 15, 20%, and so on. And I have a hypothesis that because this is impulse response based, that you could actually just sort of like pre-combine all of these cabinets into a single impulse response and thereby just have a completely stable CPU use. Even if it's a bit high, I don't care if it's 5%, but you could just have a stable CPU to use all the way through, independently of whether you have one cabinet or 10,000. And we're going to try to prove this hypothesis now. All right, guys, here is our testing setup. We have 2 tracks, and in each track I have put the same riff that I have recorded through an amplifier without any cabinet processing on. That doesn't sound that pretty when I play it, but just to show it. And then just to prove that it's exactly the same riff, we have it in the other track here. Then it became twice as loud, but if we flip the phase, it's playing and we can't hear anything because it's exactly the same sound wave. We flip the phase and they cancel each other out. This is called nulling. So here I have GGD loaded up and it's enabled. And here is what it looks like with a single cabinet microphone. Wow, right now it's coasting at 8%. That's a lot. Add another one, 13%. Add another one, 18%. And another, 21. And I think if we add one more, my microphone is going to start just acting up. Let's see. Yeah, that was it. Cool. Okay. So let us load up a demanding preset here. Let's take the kitchen sink. So this kitchen sink has 7 cabinets on top of each other. 30% CPU times. That's pretty nuts. So let's first of all export an IR of this. Kitchen sink, boom, done. And then we can then find it in here, kitchen sink, load it up, and boom. The hypothesis now is that if I render out these 2 tracks, then they are going to null. Let's try it out. Now we have 2 sound files that we have just rendered out. So this is the stem, and I'm just going back and forth in the tracks, and you can see that they're aligned on top of each other, and there seems to be a little bit of a volume difference just from the pixels dancing up and down. But let's still try. First we just played what we rendered with the GGD. And let's listen to what it sounds like in Nadir. And then flip the phase in Nadir, enable both. We can hear a little bit still. but this is almost perfect phase cancellation. Now the question is, what's the last bit? Well, maybe it's just volume. So let's try to normalize the volume on both of them. Boom, done, let's play. Ta-da, perfect silence. The one render comes from a plugin that's spending 30% of my CPU time, and the other one comes from a plugin that spends 1% of CPU time. And it's exactly the same result, because we have proven that with the null test. Get Good Drums, if you're listening, I think it would be really nice if you just changed your code so that, you just generated a new impulse response every time a setting was changed, and then you loaded up that impulse response, because that would make your plugin work a lot faster, and I think you would have more happy users from that. That's it for me today. Thank you very much if you made it this far, and have a good one.